Okay, so when I was thinking about starting news and doing news summaries, and I went through a lot of the news, I found that there are a ton of crime stories, as you probably know. And I thought, well, should I cover crime? And how should I cover crime? And the conclusion I came to was that no, I shouldn't cover crime, and at least not in the way that we typically cover it here, or at least I shouldn't summarize the stories that we do on crime. But I thought I should talk about why I wouldn't cover crime and why we should think about the way that we cover crime here in general and why it's bad. So you probably have a lot of examples in your own mind about crime and how scary it is, especially on, say, Mondays when we love reporting on crime. And basically, finding out that person A shot person B X number of times isn't really helpful, and it doesn't tell you anything. It's very exciting, it's scary, and it makes you feel a lot of things, but it doesn't communicate very much. And often, even the things we think we've learned from it are just wrong. They're just factually wrong. They didn't happen at that time. They didn't happen in that way, and they certainly didn't happen for the reasons that maybe you guess or are given at the time. And they tell you almost nothing, and they tell you nothing factually, but they do tell you some other things, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. So, crime stories here make you afraid. They make you feel like the news that you're getting is urgent and important, and you better read this crime thing because you need to know about all the crime. It makes you think of the government and the police as more important than maybe they are, and more effective than they are. It doesn't teach you how to be safer, and it doesn't talk about the causes of crime or what we can do about it. And I think it misrepresents a couple of really important things. When it comes to things like murder, for example, most murders are committed by people who know the person that they're killing, or are in some way connected. There's certainly something that should be addressed and talked about, but should you be afraid of murder compared to, say, diabetes or car accidents? I'm not, I don't think so. And they disguise the fact that the main cause of most crime that most of us will deal with, like robbery or even being held up, is poverty. It's not a genetic problem. People aren't born criminals. It's not a part of who they are. I mean, I suppose a very small percentage of people are more likely to be violent or any number of antisocial things, but they're exceedingly rare. And the idea that there's a type of person that is a criminal is based in racism and based in a lot of really bad ideas about people that only continue because it allows people to exploit other people. And the real problem, the real cause of crime, is that we don't spend money on helping people. Social services are underfunded. The types of services that would help criminals be a part of society in a way that allows them to live and support themselves and their families are underfunded. And minimum wage is $210 a week. I mean, how much do I have to say about that? Can you live on $210 a week? Where? How? You can't. And the arguments that people, this isn't the place to get into minimum wage and exploitation, but that's certainly a part of why crime is a part of our society. If people are better paid, they're not going to commit crimes. People do not want to be criminals. It's dangerous. People would rather just go to work. We don't spend money on public defenders, and there's very little recourse to solve your problems. And that's That's a real issue. If you can't go to a court or go to if you can't go to the police to solve your problems, what are you supposed to do? And that leads to some real issues, like you read about in the paper. Instead, money goes to guns and cars and stuff that looks cool, for press conferences and on police driving around, and when politicians have events, and when other politicians are visiting. That's where our money goes. It doesn't go towards the gritty, long-term things that would actually make an impact on the crime that we face. And it goes towards reinforcing the violence of the system. So let's talk a little bit about how crime is covered as it is now. Most stories begin with a conversation with the police. The police will alert the press. There are people, there are officers whose job it is to talk to the press, and they have very strict limitations on which crimes they tell us about and how they tell us about them. And very few reporters have other sources for crime stories. People will contact the news agencies directly, and that's certainly a source of things, but many, many, many stories are never reported and you never hear about. After the police tell the press about them, you can follow up. I did this. You can call a store or call the place where the crime occurred, or you can go and find the person who was involved with the crime, generally as a victim, or a witness, and talk to them about it. And invariably, when you do that, you find out that the information you got from the police is wrong or distorted. And in some cases, that's just because that's how all stories are. But in some cases, it's intentionally distorted, sometimes for reasons that are justifiable, like not telling you the amount of money that was taken because it will encourage more robbery or something like that. But sometimes because it'll make the police look bad, or, but you don't get all the information. It's not an objective release of the information. And even if you got a perfect story from the witnesses or the victims or the people who were involved, like, what does that tell you? It's an interesting story, it's an emotional story, but it doesn't get at the cause or the solution to the situation. It's just a good way to sell papers. And it doesn't make you think, it makes you worry. And that's not helpful. And then when you're getting all of your stories from the police as a reporter, it's very, I don't want to say dangerous, but you're only going to contradict the police narrative so much, because you have to talk to that person the next day or sometime after about the next crime story, because they're your source of crime. So how tense do you want that conversation to be? And that's going to limit what you say and how much you challenge their narrative. So why don't we get crime stories from other places? Why don't we get crime stories from scientific papers or social workers, or why don't we do a long, in-depth magazine-style study into crime? Because it's expensive. It's expensive to pay someone to spend a few days reading about that. It's expensive to pay for someone that understands how to read that kind of stuff and break it down in a way that is interesting and useful. It's a lot cheaper to just repeat what the police say. You're not going to get in. It's very safe to repeat what the police say. You can always blame them for inaccuracies or problems with the story. And the police, the people who are going to arrest you and maybe prosecute you for incorrect information are benefiting from the information that you're putting out there, the incorrect information that you're putting out there when it is incorrect. And those kinds of stories and that kind of PR builds good relationships with the police and the government, which is useful uh, for your business of selling news, which is, well, selling ads by selling news to people. And it furthers the narratives that you should be scared of the people around you and that we need police to protect us from the dangerous, bad people who just want to go out there and shoot everybody and want to burn the whole world down and don't want what you want, which is to just live your life peacefully. So what do we do? What do you do about this crime situation? And I do not have many answers for you, but these are the things that I think about. Don't accept the police narrative. I mean, don't accept anybody's narrative. Like, there's the idea that you're going to get the truth of anything in this life is just incorrect. But don't take if you think something is wrong, look at it. If you think something's right, look at it twice. If you're going to make decisions and take action based on things, do research. Don't just trust things because they fit the worldview that you're comfortable with. Don't listen to me. Don't trust this. Question things. Question the things that you hear, especially when it comes to violence and crime and solutions for your life. Support social workers and programs and things that actually lower crime. Work with your community, work with communities that are trying to better themselves and build ways to protect themselves. If you're gonna look at courts, crime stories and the violence in our nation, look at court, because at least then you're getting some examination of the data and you're getting some critical analysis. It's flawed in many ways, but it's better than spot news from the day that things happened. And you can at least see the results in the end and how the system fails us in a way that is useful and it might inform your decisions for the future. Pay teachers. That's just that's always the answer. Pay teachers what they're worth and stop treating teachers like expendable and only looking to them when there are problems. Pay them lots of money, more than most people, and certainly more than politicians. Stop worrying about getting shot by a stranger. Worry about not wearing your seatbelt. Worry about domestic violence and poverty and underpaid teachers. And worry about not being vaccinated and not wearing your mask and going to parties with people that are unvaccinated. Worry about wage theft. Google wage theft. You want to see crime? You want to see the biggest crime of every year? Google wage theft. Your boss is stealing from you. Worrying about people shooting you. And worry about your boss. And watch or read literally anything else. Just stop thinking of crime news as being informative or helpful. It's not. It's just emotional stuff that they farm out to you to sell their papers and their ads. It doesn't make you informed. Repeating crime statistics and crime fears just makes you a free public relations worker for the cops and the government. And you do enough unpaid work already. So, yeah, that's why I won't be reporting on crime and why I encourage you to think more about the way we talk about and think about crime.